Odds and Ends Episode 3, in which I get to stuff I should have covered last time and start to get into Bowser's actually juicy tech. Stuff I forgot to mention last time: meditation, also highly useful mid-set as we witnessed in Armada vs. Leffen. Bowser's ledge jump, it's on frame 4 as opposed to the typical 11. Reverse aerial rush and B-reverse. If you don't know what reverse aerial rush is, it's in one of the links below. B-reversal should not be confused for the melee method of turning around, for example with Sheik Needles. The melee method simply turns you around and is known as a B turnaround. B-reversal, on the other hand, completely flips your momentum, so you basically bounce off an invisible wall. If you don't fully understand the distinction, I strongly recommend you check out the comments. Later in this video, I'm going to use the term wave bounce. This is simply a combined B turnaround and B reverse. The cumulative effect is to maintain your character's current direction, but also reversing your aerial momentum. These techniques are completely essential for Bowser, and you should know them before you get started on anything in this video. Alright, let's get to it. Koopa Boot Camp Part 2, less essential stuff. These techniques are still important for Bowser, but they're not as critical as the stuff in the previous video. If you haven't mastered everything already covered, I'd suggest you start with that. Number 1, power shielding. Power shielding is kinda niche in that it'll only really help you against projectile characters, but it's very important for those matchups. To perform a power shield, wait until a projectile is within your shield radius, but not quite touching Bowser's face. Then fully push down one of your triggers if those are your shield buttons, or hit Y or X if you bound one of those to shield. If you've done it correctly, the projectile will simply bounce off. Bowser has an unusually good power shield because when he crouches, his hurt box is well inside the radius of his shield. This means that you have a large timing window to deflect the projectile. To practice power shielding, simply use 2 controllers, pick Bowser with one, and Falco or Mewtwo or whatever you want to practice against with the other. Go to Final Destination and mash B on one controller while you try to hit your power shields with the other. Even just an hour of practicing this will likely make an astounding difference in your play against projectile-heavy characters. If you take a level 1 Fox to FD, he'll probably short-hop double laser, and you can practice on those as well. Number 2, fast fall shenanigans from platforms. Due to Bowser's enormous threatening forward air and long muscle memory from melee, most players will expect you to drop from platforms and try to hit them with forward airs. Most opponents will very rarely jump up to challenge you when you're dropping from a platform, and will typically respond either with a shield or a grounded anti-aerial attack. With this in mind, it's important that you're able to mix it up with flame cancels, B-reverses, wave bounce, and other techniques in order to mix up your momentum and exactly what attack you're hitting with when you fall. Using these techniques, you should be able to hit a Koopa Claw at a huge variety of spacings, as well as spacing yourself precisely when dropping with a flame cancel. Flame Cancel will typically be your best attack against shielding or spot dodging opponents, and a neutral air will likely be your best option against people who are trying to challenge you with an attack. Note that it's much easier to fast fall with a neutral air from a platform if you're using C-stick attack, because you can simply hit a diagonal direction on the C-stick as you're hitting down on the control stick in order to fast fall. Fast falling in Nair otherwise is effectively impossible for most players. A handy trick you can use to fake out attackers is to edge cancel your running animation by simply letting go of the control stick when you're near the edge. If you go into your teetering animation, you've done it right. At that point you can dash back, use any standing option, drop through the platform, or do whatever you like. Number 3, shield dropping. There's a ton of videos on this for melee, so I don't feel like I need to cover it in too much detail. Hold your shield on a platform and gently push your stick down until you drop through. If you hit the stick too quickly, you'll spot dodge. If you hit it too slowly, nothing at all will happen. This is difficult but possible to do consistently. For me personally, it's easiest to gently rotate the stick to the left as I'm pulling it downwards. Because I've practiced a specific motion so many times, it's easier to force myself to not spot dodge, but your mileage may vary. In any case, Bowser actually has one of the best shield drops in the game due to the enormous coverage of his huge aerials, and the fact that he can hit opponents with a neutral air or a forward air as they're standing on the platform as he's dropping through. Number 4, claw canceling. This is a little known right now, and there's a possibility it'll get changed at some point in the next patch, but who cares? Basically, there are 2 separate Koopa Claw animations, an aerial and a grounded animation. When you begin a Koopa Claw in the air and then land on the ground, it simply transitions to the grounded animation as if nothing had happened. For example, if you land on frame 5 of the aerial animation, the grounded animation will begin on frame 6 and proceed normally. The grounded claw has heavy armor that begins on frame 4, whereas the aerial claw does not. However, if you start an aerial claw and then land within the first 3 frames, such that you're in the grounded animation on frame 4, you will land and smoothly transition into the grounded claw, including the armor, and you can power through attacks this way. It seems to be a comparably tight window to perfect wave landing, and I recommend practicing it in debug mode so it's much easier to see whether you successfully got the armor or not. Again, this is very niche, but it's a lot of fun. Number 5, pivots. By this point, I assume you've been paying attention so far and have already set your C-stick to attack, otherwise this is probably going to be impossible. In my opinion, this is easily the hardest technique for 20XX Bowser, but it could be important in the future. Pivot F smash is useless, but pivot jab and pivot F tilt are probably both pretty good. There are 2 main techniques for going about this, and I'm not quite sure at this point which is more difficult, so I'll simply present them both. A standard pivot, like we often see in Melee, occurs when you input an action during the standing frame of your dash dance, i.e., within 1 frame of turning around. During this 1 frame, you can do anything your character could ordinarily do while standing. In this case, inputting either a jab or an F-tilt by hitting the corresponding directions on the C-stick. Forward for an F-tilt, and up and to the left is probably the easiest direction for a jab. You can also hit backwards for a jab, but I personally just find that confusing. This method requires extremely precise timing using the 2 analog sticks, and it's extremely difficult. The other method for inputting pivots is also extremely difficult, but for different reasons. You can simply empty pivot by performing a motion that's actually quite similar to a shield drop. After you're dashing one way, gently move the stick to the other direction until it just barely crosses the center of the joystick's mount. If you've done it correctly, your character will simply turn around and enter a standing animation, allowing you to input whatever attack you like or even a crouch. This empty pivot technique is probably more versatile than the Melee version because you can do any action out of it rather than simply a jab or an F-tilt. And it's easier for me personally. If you're going to only practice one, I recommend this style. Alright, now, finally, we can do the stylish and completely niche stuff. So everything from this point forward is either useless or near to it. I wouldn't recommend practicing this until you've got a solid understanding of everything else. A few of these techniques may be useful in the future, but nobody's anywhere close to mastering Bowser to the level where they'll become necessary. Number 1, Moonwalks. Bowser's Moonwalk in itself kinda sucks. It only seems to really work properly after a waveland. There's a ton of tutorials on Moonwalks out there already, so I suggest you just Google it. To Moonwalk, hit your control stick rapidly to one side. This is the direction your character is going to face while you're moonwalking. And then quickly rotate it to the other side in a half moon motion without moving the control stick all the way to the bottom or through the middle of the joystick's mount. I'll demonstrate here with an example. I'm going to waveland left and then moonwalk in the same direction while facing right. Obviously, for the initial waveland, my stick needs to be facing directly left while I hit L to air dodge. I then wait a couple frames for the waveland animation to complete and jam the stick to the right. Bowser turns around and you can see him beginning his dash animation. At this point, we've got a bunch of momentum moving left, but Bowser's animation has him going right. If we simply hit the stick straight left at this point, Bowser would begin dash dancing and would lose all the momentum gained from the waveland. Instead, we now very quickly make the half moon motion described earlier. I move the control stick to the left as quickly as I can without touching the top, bottom, or center of the joystick mount, and Bowser's momentum is carried into a moonwalk. If you want to practice the moonwalk motion in isolation without first having to waveland, here's what it'll look like if you do it properly. Again, without the waveland momentum carrying Bowser, this looks pretty pathetic. But if you're able to get this result consistently, it's now time to practice doing it after wavelands, and you can start using this in your games. Here's an example of a stylish edgehog technique you can use that incorporates wavelands and moonwalks. I cannot be held responsible for any pregnancies that result from using this technique. Number 2. I don't know if there's a name for this, so I'm just going to call it platform launching. If you perfect waveland across a platform and then quickly drop through it, your momentum is preserved, for at least a little bit. While this momentum would normally decay if you double jumped or used a regular move or did nothing at all, you can actually maintain it until you land by throwing out a special move. In this case, Koopa Claw seems to be the most useful one. Unlike the Boost Claw, which keeps you pretty high up in the air and doesn't really let you grab a lot of grounded opponents, this technique allows you to claw grab grounded opponents who can even be short characters like Kirby or Jigglypuff from a very large distance away. I'll note again that this technique is both extremely difficult and wildly impractical. Don't expect to land this in neutral. Number 3, B-reverse Koopa Claw ledge stall. Try saying that 5 times fast. Simply grab a ledge, let go of the ledge, double jump backwards, Koopa Claw backwards, B-reverse it, and find yourself back on the ledge. Your friends will be amazed at your tech skill as you kill yourself 3 times in grand finals using this incredible technique. Number 4, fortress stalling. This is easily the most useful technique in this video. I probably should have started with this one. As mentioned in the previous video, Bowser can act out of his ledge jump on frame 4, which is much earlier than most other characters. This means you can ledge jump, air dodge straight down, and fortress hawk very quickly, maintaining invincibility throughout most of the animations. I strongly recommend wave landing at an angle towards this stage, because currently, on some sides of some stages, air dodging straight down out of your ledge jump will actually instantly kill you. The left ledge of Smashville is one example of this. Number 5, edge cancels. Credit once again to Jake, the same guy who found the rapid jab. Or maybe it was Spider-Man, the guy who normally runs PMDepot. I'm not sure. It's well known that if you land on the edge of a platform with an aerial and allow your momentum to carry you off, you won't suffer any end lag for that aerial, so I don't feel too much need to cover that in detail. What most people don't know is that if you land in your teetering animation, you can stay on the edge and still suffer no end lag. Ordinarily, if you stand on an edge and jump and perform an aerial, the game will push you back very slightly so that you aren't in your teetering animation when you land. You can outsmart the game. Simply flick your control stick towards the edge, very quickly and very briefly while you're in the air, and it should nudge your character forward enough so that you are in your teetering animation when you land, and therefore suffer 0 landing lag. Even auto-cancels have 5 frames of lag, which is your normal landing lag. This has literally none, and also cancels landing hitboxes, such as on Bowser's down aerial. This means that I can stand on the edge and spam Bowser's down aerial like this, and if I hit with any of them, the hit opponent will be sent straight down rather than to the side like would normally happen from down air's landing hitbox. I'm also obviously able to do this much faster than normal because of the 0 landing lag from the aerial. That's all for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Next time we start covering the good stuff, fundamentals.